The proposed question is simple. What is the strongest melee ability in Destiny 2? And for this, anything goes. Exotic armors, weapon perks, and subclass options to give the strongest punch. The only thing I would exclude here is artifact mods, as these will be changing in less than a week, and I'll be testing all melees against Carl, unless they have a specific activation requirement, such as Peregrines against champions. Starting from base, a melee deals 8,685 damage, and here's some simple boosts. Titans, you have Synthoceps. This is a 160% increase when surrounded, bringing melee damage to 23,000. But better yet, you have Worm Gods, maximising at a 275% increase, bringing melee damage to 32,000. Also, you could use a common weapon perk to increase melee damage, this one being 1-2 punch. Adding that to Worm Gods now gives 65,000 damage. But up to now, this has only been uncharged melees and some simple damage modifiers. The most common heavy hitting Titan strats are Banner of War with grapple melee and Consecration spam. So how are those? Using the best option so far of Worm Gods plus 1-2 punch, but also alongside the Banner of War, this altogether gave 2 hits of 171,000 for a total of 343,000. But what about Consecrate? Same premise as before, but no Banner of War this time. Instead, there's the knockout aspect, which increases charge melee damage by 50%. The damage here from one activation is split: 285,000 impact, 24,000 in priming, and 244,000 in ignition, for a total of 553,000. I'll be back on Titan later for some ridiculous damage stacking, but for now I wanted to check up on Hunter. All of their best comes from Prismatic, and there's 2 ways you could go with this: either Lie's Handshake and Combination Blow, or Spirit of Synthoceps with grapple melees. Spirit of Synthoceps, and with these you of course need to be surrounded by enemies, and ideally have one of the following: Stylus Executioner active, which actually turned out to be harder than I thought, or a 1-2 punch shotgun. With just a 1-2 punch, you'll be able to hit for 110,000 times 2, for a total of 220,000. There is however a way to combine all of these buffs. First, fire a tether at your intended target and have lower health enemies nearby. Now when you hit that target with a 1-2 punch shotgun, this damage will also be shared to all nearby enemies, hopefully taking at least one of those out. This will activate Stylus Executioner, and you will still have a 1-2 punch buff for a second. As this is happening, you will need to be in the process of charging a grapple melee. With everything together, this hit for 317,000 times 2, for a total of 634,000. Lie's Handshake is thankfully less complicated but just as strong. This one requires Combination Blow to be used, and Gambler's Dodge as a method of regenerating melee energy in an infinite loop. Because of class ability usage being required, Winter Shroud is an obvious pairing. A frozen target will take an additional 120% melee damage as long as it's not a boss. If everything's done correctly, this will hit for 813,000, which is what makes Combination Blow Prismatic Hunter one of the best solo setups in the game. Back to Titans. Here's the real heavy hitter: Shoulder Charge Melee with Peregrine Greaves. This provides a 225% increase to shoulder charge melee damage, except on these types of enemies: mini-bosses, tormentors, and champions. These will instead take 1000% increased damage. And the best melee boosting pairing of this is something a bit different this time in Offensive Bulwark, because 1-2 punch just doesn't last long enough, and Prismatic does not offer any boost exceeding this one's effect of 100% increased damage, and it remains active as long as you have a Void Overshield, which is quite easy to maintain. A Void Shoulder Charge against Carl, which is a mini-boss, dealt 632,000 damage. In comparing this to an Onlight champion, just to confirm, the values was the same. Now I did say you couldn't use 1-2 punch, because it only has a 1 second duration, whereas Peregrine Greaves takes 2.5 seconds to ready. But you can use something which is basically the same thing, which is what Bastion happens to have. But this one lasts for 2.7 seconds. So there's a really tight window in which both Bastion and Peregrines will be active, doubling the previous 632k hit. This one hits with a visual cap of just under 1 million, but it would actually be 1.265 million damage in a single punch, making it the hardest hitter so far, alas not against every single target. Finally, Warlocks. They have the highest damage potential on all targets increasing exotic with Winter's Guile, which caps out at a 275% increase. But the problem is there's just not much to pair this with. Here's a few decent options I found. Incinerator Snap will cause an ignition if 4 or more sparks hit a single target, but the good part is this ignition also scales off any melee multipliers, so it can end up hitting really hard. In total, an Incinerator Snap hit for 17,000 5 times, alongside a 135,000 ignition, for a total of 225,000. Strand Warlock of course has grapple melee available to them too. With full Winter's Gale stacks, this hit for 156,000 twice, for a total of 312,000. But also because Winter's Gale has such a great multiplier, with some more niche melee options which can also benefit from this too, such as Monte Carlo's Bayonet. This one is actually quite potent, hitting for 182,000, and it's even more crazy against non-boss targets, which are being hit for 501,000 every time. It's completely overkill at this point, but it is there. Winterbite has the highest glaive melee with a 50% boost whenever ammo is loaded into the magazine. Each melee swing with this and the Winter's Guile hits for 79,000. Not the highest, but these can be landed in rapid succession and apply slow each time. So that's the lot. If you want the absolute most damage, it's surprisingly Bastion and Peregrines. A bit less surprising is Prismatic Hunter came next best. Liar's Handshake with Combination Blow being a very hard hitter. But Synthoceps with Grapple Melee and Stylus Executioner being very close and viable for boss damage. Titans have probably the easiest to execute method of more than Consecration, Knockouts and Synthoceps, which have been used to clear GM activities consistently this season and for good reason. Thank you for watching.